going on, guys? It's Matt, coach of the FF Mediators. We're going to dive into our Dynasty Quarterback Rankings today. We're going to get right started with it, Coach. We're going to throw the rankings up here on the board, kind of walk through our tiers, walk through these players' values, and kind of why we have them in this order. But let's start with that first tier, Coach. We've got Jaden Daniels as the QB1, followed by Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson to round out our top three. So let's work through that S tier for a little bit here, Coach. Tell me why you think Daniels should be the QB1 overall in Dynasty.
Well, Daniels obviously had an outstanding rookie season. He proved that he can throw the football, he can run the football. His value is through the roof. If you're a Dynasty fantasy football owner, Jaden Daniels, you can get the world for him right now. He's younger than these other guys. He already proved it in the playoffs. Like, we could go on and on about Jaden Daniels and how he has, in such an early amount of time, proven himself to be an elite quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, and his situation has kind of changed too going into his second season. He's already added Debo to this roster via trade. We'll see if they make any moves in the draft because we're about 2 weeks out from that. But he's proven what he can do. I mean, he finished the year as QB5. There's a ton of rushing upside, a ton of passing upside. He's a great RPO reader. So he's someone that I definitely want on my fantasy roster. He's going to be hard to go and buy right now. There is some controversy there. I think you could say that Josh Allen deserves to be there as well, who's our QB2 coach. If you look at his fantasy finishes for the last 10 years, last 5 years, it's very impressive. I mean, QB2, 1, 2, 1, and 1. He has absolutely dominated fantasy lineups, coach. So tell us about Josh Allen at QB2.
Well, Josh Allen threw for a few less yards this past year, but oddly enough, he threw for far less interceptions as well. I thought Josh Allen had a solid season. He's just proven over and over again that the dude can really do it with his legs. They love to run quarterback power on the goal line. He finds his way in the end zone a lot, which really makes his value elite year after year.
Yeah, kind of similar to Jalen Hurts, where he has that elite rushing upside just to get touchdowns at the goal line. 12 this past season, 15 in the year before, but it's not from the same means. It's not necessarily always a tush push with him. We see him running it in from, 20, 30 yards out, sometimes even 60 yards out. Josh Allen's a heck of a player, man. And, you mentioned his passing this past season, only 6 interceptions. So he's definitely done a really good job, especially given the limited weapons that are in Buffalo. We'll see if they make a move come draft time, but he played fantastic last year, and he's kind of solidified himself as being one of the top QBs in fantasy with not really a lot of concerns right now, Coach. Do you think there's anything that we should be worried about?
No, not in my opinion. I do think with Lamar Jackson on there, him and Josh Allen have a lot of things in common. Both are 28 years old. Both really know how to use their feet. Josh Allen as well as Lamar Jackson both have the same trajectory when it comes to their ability over the next 3 or 4 years. When we think dynasty, we think about it in terms of 3 or 4 year windows. And I think both these guys are going to be elite quarterbacks for the next 3 years.
Yeah, you mentioned Lamar. Lamar rounds out our top three. We have all those guys in the same tier, so you could make an argument for any of them. Lamar finishing QB1 this past season, but it's off 41 passing touchdowns, which is absolutely insane when you really think about it for Lamar. And given his profile up to this point, only 4 interceptions. He's done well not to turn the ball over the last few years, but Coach, I wouldn't lie if I didn't say I had some concerns about whether Lamar could replicate this passing attack he had this past season. The rushing upside, no doubt, is there. He only had 4 rushing touchdowns, so you could definitely see that improve. But 41 passing touchdowns just seems like it's not necessarily attainable again.
Yeah, now you're right about that. Probably not attainable when it comes to 41 touchdowns. Like, that's just absurd. But like you said, the rushing touchdowns is going to come back up. It won't be 4 again either. You could count on that doubling at least.
Yeah, and I think we're in agreement that with this first tier, all 3 guys, we would be wanting 3 first-round picks if we were trading, just for capital in general. You'd probably want at least 2 of those to be very early. And then if you wanted something extra, you definitely would deserve it with moving one of these guys. It's just a plug and play for a roster. I mean, Josh Allen just simply wins weeks. Daniels will do that, and same with Lamar. But let's just jump to our second tier here, Coach, with Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts. In our tier 2 there, let's start with Joe Burrow, coach. I mean, there's a lot to like as being a pocket passer. He's not necessarily going to have that rushing upside to offer you, but man, the guy can sling the ball around, almost 5,000 passing yards this past season, 43 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. And he's done this before, so I don't necessarily think that's going to stop. Both his wide receivers were paid, so there's a lot to like about Joe Burrow's profile.
Yeah, Joe Burrow is just an elite pocket passer, like you said, probably the best in the league right now when it comes to just standing in a pocket and delivering. He was quarterback 3 last year. Suffered an injury in 23, which cost him a lot there. Only played 10 games. But then in 22 and 21, he was the top 10 quarterback in those years as well in fantasy. Like you said, his weapons are going to be there for a while. There's no reason why Joe Burrow isn't going to be a guy that's going to stand back there and deliver the goods again this season.
Yeah, I mean, he's just going to sit there and lead this offense, and I just don't see it changing. He's played so well last year; it was really impressive. But let's talk about Jalen Hurts. There's some question marks here at QB5 for us. Will the tush push get banned? Because that's going to significantly impact his fantasy value. He'll certainly still run some, rushing touchdowns in at the goal line, or maybe scramble in and get a few in there. But for the most part, it is dominated by tush push production. 14, 15, 13, 10 rushing touchdowns the last 4 years, respectively. Coach, what's your thoughts on Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Hurts is 100% tush push dependent when it comes to where he's located in our rankings. Quarterback 8, 2, 3, 9. That's his last 4 years. I mean, the guy's elite, especially when he can tush push it into the goal line. If something changes there, obviously, then our opinion will change as well. That's something to keep in mind over the next month or so. If it doesn't, then we don't see anything changing with Jalen Hurts. Although he has proven that he's an elite quarterback in the NFL, his dynasty value will take a major hit if something happens tush push wise.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we know what he is as a passer. I don't think he's necessarily going to win the day. He's certainly not Joe Burrow. And I would be shocked if he put up those Lamar numbers this past season. It's just not necessarily in his game. He's got the weapons in that offense, which is always going to be enticing when you pair that with rushing upside. But just know there's some concern in Hurts's profile. Not enough to say you should just move him for nothing, but just know that his fantasy could be impacted by the elimination of the tush push.
Yeah, and it is a good time to think about moving him as well.
Mhm.
If you think the tush push could get banned and one of your buddies in your league does not, then now might be a good time to capitalize on that.
Yeah, because you're not wrong there. If it were to get banned, his fantasy value will take at least a slight hit. I think it might be a little bit more than a lot of us want to admit, but he's still a good player and he's going to put up a bunch of fantasy points. So he's established in the top 5 for now. But just know that we'll have to monitor his profile. But let's just jump to our next tier coach here, and that's going to be Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and CJ Stroud in tier 3. Let's start with Mahomes, coach. Lot to be concerned about. I mean, not necessarily his best year. He was still a top 12 quarterback, and we kind of treat it like the sky is falling, but he's still Mahomes, right?
Yeah, I think so. They dealt with a lot of issues there, and they had to play the game with at least 2 tight ends half the time this past year. I think they'll go out of their way to expand the offense and spread things back out again. I don't see him finishing as quarterback 11 again this coming season. I think he'll improve there. Obviously, like you say, he's Patrick Mahomes. He's 29 years old, so I feel good about it in the next 3 years. I like Patrick Mahomes moving forward. I think he's a guy that could move up into the next tier, even if things just get back to normal for him.
Yeah, I mean, he had 11 interceptions, 26 touchdowns, almost 4,000 passing yards, and his wide receiver unit was not very good, to be honest. And I'd expect that to get better with the return of Rashee Rice. Hollywood Brown was a person they actively were trying to get back, and he has resigned, so I could see him getting some value. Maybe they draft a guy. Xavier Worthy will be in year 2, so I think things are kind of trending towards getting him back to his old form. Not necessarily the Tyreek Hill days, but it can't be much worse than what it was this past season.
Right, and a healthy Rashee Rice is a really good football player. If he comes
Mhm.
back healthy, that's going to make a major impact on not just Mahomes, but the entire offense in Kansas City as well.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, let's talk about Justin Herbert, coach, who we have next at QB7. First 2 years of his career, QB9, QB2 overall. Very, very impressive start, but it's kind of gone a little bit downhill since then, coach. The touchdowns haven't quite replicated. He hasn't necessarily turned the ball over the last 2 years, only 10 total interceptions between the 2 years. But do you think that maybe Jim Harbaugh and kind of maybe this draft reignites this offense and they can get things rolling?
I do. I feel that way. I do think this is probably a controversial spot for him. We had a lot of discussion about this before this recording. Herbert, like you said, came into the league and just lit it up. He struggled a little bit after that, but so have the Chargers. Obviously, there was major progression in that football team this past season. And I think, like you mentioned just a second ago, Harbaugh in his second season would look for that offense to continue to improve and Herbert's numbers to keep going up the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, they've invested a lot at both tackle positions, so I think they're kind of going about it the right way of establishing that front. They traded for Najee Harris. We'll see what happens there. Maybe they draft a guy like Colston Loveland and kind of get another pass catcher for Justin Herbert. But I think there's a lot to like about him going forward, and I expect better days than the QB 17 finish of 2 years ago and QB 12 this past year. I mean, again, he didn't turn the ball over. If he can get just some more production from the wide receivers, some more touchdowns, we'll definitely see an uptick in his fantasy value. But, Coach, let's round out this tier here with C.J. Stroud. Another interesting case with the fantastic rookie season where he was QB 11. This past year was QB 18, so he had some regression. Just under 4,000 yards. He had 3,700 total with 20 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. Coach, what's your temperature on C.J. Stroud?
Yeah, something to remember with C.J. Stroud is he's still just 23 years old. Him and Jaden Daniels are the same age. That means a lot. I do think he's going to, like you said, he's going to improve this season, get back to his rookie year and how he was so successful. Now, I do think there's even room for even more improvement, especially when it comes to wide receivers staying healthy and the offense expanding a little bit over the next couple of years. I think C.J. Stroud's a guy that you can get cheaper now than you could this time a year ago. So it might be a great chance for you to go out and buy C.J. Stroud.
I actually love that idea, too, of going out and buying him. I mean, there's a lot to like. Obviously, Tank Dell went down last year. That hurt him. Stephon Diggs got hurt. Nico had some time where he was in and out. They added Christian Kirk, and I think that's actually a pretty beneficial landing spot where you get a veteran like that throw in the slot and kind of let CJ just get another person to absorb some of those targets and give Nico a little bit more help and time on the outside. They could absolutely draft someone in the first round. A lot of people have mocked Igbuka to reignite with CJ Stroud, and I think that would be a great fit too. So there's better days ahead for CJ Stroud. He's got a fantastic coach. We'll see what happens with that offensive line. It's not very good, and they kind of decimated it this offseason, including a trade of Laramie Tunsil to my Washington Commanders. So we'll see what they do on that front, but I definitely think that CJ Stroud is someone we should be buying in dynasty leagues. And Coach, kind of just to round out this tier, I mean, we're talking about guys that are still probably worth at least 2 firsts, right? Maybe 3 firsts. If you're going to move them or you're moving for them, you're going to have to give up a pretty big piece to get those guys.
Yeah, I think so. I agree. You're going to have to pay a lot. But like I mentioned, like C.J. Stroud, you might can get him a little cheaper than you think right now. Last year, his value was at least 3 firsts probably. It's come down a little bit, I imagine. But at the same time, if you've got these guys and someone's interested, you can ask for a lot in return.
Totally agree. Well, let's round out our top 10 here, Coach, with our final tier, and that's going to be Caleb Williams at QB9 and Bo Nix at QB10. We definitely went back and forth on these last 2 picks, so don't think that we didn't debate some of this. Caleb Williams, we've said many, many times, there's a lot to like about this offense going forward. They've added Ben Johnson, made some heavy investments into that interior offensive line to give him more time and maybe, link up with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze a little bit more. We'll see if they add someone like Genty to this offense. But, the better days are ahead for the Chicago Bears. I think that Caleb Williams, it's now or never. I think he's got the talent to do it. So he's someone that I think squeaks into the top 10 and is someone you could probably go buy right now because if he hits, you're not going to be able to get him.
Yeah, well, we discussed this the other day, and Caleb Williams was in an offense last year that was horrific. He did not play well. The offense was really, really bad, and he still finished as quarterback 16. So there is a really, really high ceiling there in Chicago with Ben Johnson, the wide receiver core, like you said, a revamped offensive line. Like things are looking up for Caleb Williams. It's really probably a make or break year for him. But again, the guy's 23 years old. He really took care of the football last year, did not have a lot of turnovers. I just really think this is going to be the year. Like now's the opportunity for Caleb Williams to shine, and he needs to step up and get it done. With number 1 overall pick, he's going to get an opportunity for a couple more years to show what he can do. And, opportunity means a lot. And I really believe in Caleb Williams. I think he's going to find a way to be a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah, and I think we should mention too, he did a good job of not turning the ball over, only 6 interceptions, but only 20 touchdowns. And that's a number I could definitely see going up at least a decent bit if, with that more time in the pocket, because he was running for his life basically the entire game each week last year. So I think Caleb Williams is going to have a little bit more time to make things happen now.
I mean,
Go ahead,
wouldn't you
Coach.
be surprised? Wouldn't you be surprised if it wasn't higher? I mean, that would shock me if it wasn't at least somewhat better, right?
I think so too, because every single person on this list, even when we talked about their passing flaws, they all surpassed 20 touchdowns by a decent bit. I mean, except for Hurts, he only had 18, but he had 14 on the ground. So it's just different with Jalen Hurts. So I think Caleb's going to have the opportunity, like you said, to really improve on that number and just, get into a better situation than what he was in this past season.
Yep.
But let's talk about Bo Nix, Coach, who rounds out our top 10. Again, like I said, we went back and forth on these players, but we settled on Bo Nix. He's been your guy since day one, so I'm going to let you kick it off and tell us why he's a top 10 quarterback.
Well, Bo Nix in his rookie year, he was QB7. People don't realize how good he actually was. I mean, in fantasy football, he was quarterback 7 and half PPR. I mean, that speaks volumes. There's a couple things about his game that make him stand out. He's really good reading RPOs, similar to Jaden Daniels in that category. But he also has really good feet. Like he's a really good athlete, and he can extend plays, by running the football. And there's a lot of good things to like about Bo Nix and his, success both running and throwing that makes him a top 10 quarterback.
And, this time last year, before we had the draft, you kept screaming, after the NFL draft, before rookie drafts, you were screaming that Bo Nix landing with a guy like Sean Payton mattered. Sean Payton knows what he's doing. He's been in the league for a long time. He understands quarterbacks, developed and had Drew Brees for years. Is Bo Nix Drew Brees? To be determined. But what we do know is in first year, it was a success. I mean, 29 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 3,700 passing yards. Like you said, he adds a little bit of work on the ground, 430 yards, 4 touchdowns. So that's at least something that you can add to his profile. And, not dissimilar to what we're just talking about with Caleb Williams. Could you see those numbers getting better? I think I could, because the pass catchers in Denver weren't necessarily anything to be afraid of either. I mean, they have holes all over this roster. If they get some more talent and plug that in to help them out, I mean, Cortland Sutton's an established player, but maybe another wide receiver, maybe a tight end, maybe a running back. I could definitely see this Broncos offense kind of taking it to the next level and continue to score a bunch of points.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Cortland Sutton really did a good job of helping him out. They brought in Evan Ingram. In the offseason, he's really going to help them at tight end. I think some of the younger guys like Vele and Troy Franklin may even step up to help Bo Nix out this season. If they can draft someone, there's a lot of room there for Bo Nix to improve, especially with Sean Payton.
Yeah. Well, let's throw up our rankings one more time, Coach. And while we're thinking about that, is there anybody on the outside looking in that you think might be able to sneak into the top 10 rankings as the season goes on?
Well, Drake May was a guy we really discussed back and forth with over some of these last 3 spots. He played really good the last few games of the season last year, and he can make a real run here early in the year to be a top 10 dynasty quarterback. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Drake May was my choice. He was a guy that I was saying or arguing to be in the top 10, but I'm comfortable with where we put Nix. I mean, you've also got J.J. McCarthy out there. What do we do with him? He's certainly going to have the opportunity with tons of talent. I mean, guys like Jordan Love, Kyler Murray, Brock Purdy, those are names that we left out. So could we see those guys squeak back into the top 10? But for now, I think that's going to leave it there, Coach. If you're interested in our quarterback rankings or other position rankings, be sure to comment below, and we can come back and let you know some opportunities there. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the Faceoff Sports Network, and we'll catch you next time.